a $47 money order, a strip of worthless floodplain, and a laugh from a banker that echoed for 23 years. What happens when the man everyone dismissed turns out to be the only one who read the fine print? The lawyer's voice cracked on the second word. He said, "Mr. Hollis, the pipeline is frozen, $340 million in the ground, and we cannot move forward without your signature." Raymond Hollis was standing in his kitchen. He looked at the blue ceramic mug on the counter. He looked at the window. He said nothing for a long moment. Then he said, "I know." He hung up. That was March 2024. To understand why the lawyer was panicking, you have to go back 23 years. Back to a Tuesday morning in October 2001, when Raymond Hollis walked into the basement of the Mercer County Courthouse, wearing a canvas jacket with a fraying cuff and carrying a money order for $40. The basement smelled like mildew and old paper, folding tables, a coffee pot on a plastic cart in the corner that had been burning the same pot since 7 that morning. 14 men standing around with styrofoam cups, most of them watching the door, deciding who was worth watching. Nobody watched Raymond. He was 41 years old. He drove a 1994 Ford Ranger that made a sound on cold mornings like it was filing a complaint. He worked maintenance for the Pocahontas County School District. He did not own a briefcase. He picked up a half-sheet bid form. The ballpoint pen at the table kept skipping. He pressed harder. Parcel 7C, 12 acres, flood plain, no road access listed, assessed value $47. Douglas Garrett was standing 6 feet away. Garrett ran the loan desk at First Valley Bank. He drove a silver Tahoe and wore the same tan sport coat to every county auction and considered himself a man who understood value. He watched Raymond fill out the form and leaned toward the man beside him. He said something. The man beside him laughed. Garrett smiled into his coffee. Raymond did not look up. He finished the form. He walked to the table at the front. He handed over the $40 money order he had made out the week before. Already folded once, pressed flat in his shirt pocket since 6 that morning. The clerk stamped it, handed back a receipt. Raymond folded the receipt and put it in his coat pocket. That was the whole transaction. Garrett bought 2 parcels that morning, a cleared lot near Route 19 for $4,200 and a Dry Ridge parcel for $1,800. He signed both forms with a broad, fast signature and told the man beside him he'd have offers in by spring. Raymond watched him from across the room. He did not say anything. He did not feel anything that showed. He walked out of that courthouse basement, the legal owner of 12 acres of West Virginia, floodplain with no listed road access, and 3 men watched him go, and 2 of them were still smiling when the door swung shut. That evening, Raymond drove home on Route 52. He did not take the shortcut. He took the long way, the way that ran past the lower field at the edge of Fishing Creek, past the gravel pull-off where survey flags had gone up in August and come back down in September. He slowed. He looked. Then he drove on. Dottie was in the kitchen when he got home. She had a crossword puzzle on the table and a mug of tea going cold at her elbow. She looked up when he came in. "Anything good?" Raymond set his keys on the counter. "Maybe," he said. She went back to the puzzle. He sat down across from her and looked at his hands for a moment. Then he pulled the folded receipt from his coat pocket and set it flat on the table between them. 12 acres, $47. She looked at it. She looked at him. "What's wrong with it?" "Nothing I can see," he said. She waited. He didn't add anything. She turned back to the puzzle. Raymond looked at the receipt. He thought about the August survey flags. He thought about the gravel pull-off. He thought about a 43-page county record he had read in a library 8 months ago. A single paragraph on page 43 that had made him sit very still for a long time. He thought about all of it, and he didn't say any of it. He picked up the receipt and put it back in his coat pocket. That was the whole evening. But Raymond Hollis was sitting at that kitchen table, knowing something that nobody else in Mercer County knew. Something nobody at the auction had thought to look for. Something Douglas Garrett, with his tan sport coat and his silver Tahoe, had never once considered checking. He would keep knowing it alone for a while longer. That was fine. He was patient. Don't go anywhere, because what this quiet man found in that library is something the developer paid 3 attorneys to make disappear. Hit subscribe and stay locked in. February 1998, Mercer County Public Library, third table from the back wall. Raymond had been coming on Wednesday evenings for 6 weeks. He always took the same table. He always brought the same thing: a legal pad, a ballpoint pen, and a thermos of coffee from home, because the library's vending machine cost $1 and the coffee tasted like cardboard. He was not there for books, he was there for maps. It had started with something a foreman said at work, a throwaway line about a road expansion that the state had planned back in the early 70s. A secondary route meant to connect Route 52 to a cluster of rural parcels near Fishing Creek. The project had died in committee in 1974. Most people had forgotten it existed. Raymond had not forgotten. He had started pulling records. County plat maps from 1955. Road survey documents filed with the state in 1956. Deed transfer records going back to 1940. He went through them slowly, page by page, the way a man reads something he expects to find something in. On his 6th Wednesday, he pulled a bound volume of Mercer County Recorded Resolutions from 1972. He turned to page 43. He read the paragraph twice. Then he read it a third time. A public access easement, 12 feet wide, surveyed in 1956 along the eastern edge of a floodplain parcel near Fishing Creek Road. Recorded in the county's official books in August 1972. Granting any future owner of that parcel the legal right of ingress and egress to Route 52. The county had never passed a resolution to vacate it. Nobody had ever filed to dissolve it. It was still alive on the books. Raymond set the volume down. He looked at the table in front of him. He looked at the exit sign above the door across the room. He picked up his pen and copied the paragraph, word for word, onto his legal pad. He closed the volume. He returned it to the shelf. He sat back down and looked at what he had written. 12 feet wide. That was not much. That was nothing if you were just looking at a map. It was everything, if you knew what was on the other side. He drove home in the dark. Dottie was at the kitchen table. The kettle was on the stove, just starting to hiss. He sat down and pulled out the legal pad. He tore off the top sheet. He turned it over to the blank side and picked up a pen. He drew a rectangle. He labeled it 7 to C. He drew a thin line from the bottom edge of the rectangle to a road he marked Route 52. He drew a second, larger rectangle on the other side of Route 52 and labeled it nothing. He put the pen down. Dottie poured 2 mugs and set one in front of him. She looked at the drawing. "What's the blank one?" "Nobody owns it yet," he said. She nodded. She did not ask anything else. Raymond looked at the hand-drawn map for a long time. The kettle clicked off. Outside it had started to rain. He folded the map once and put it inside the front cover of a green composition notebook that Dottie had given him 2 Christmases ago. He had used 4 pages of it before tonight. He was going to need more. Over the next 18 months, Raymond drove past Fishing Creek 17 times. He wasn't obvious about it. He took Route 52 home from work 3 days a week anyway. It added 4 minutes. He didn't stop. He slowed down near the gravel pull-off and looked and kept going. In the spring of 1999, new survey flags went up along the eastern edge of the blank rectangle he had drawn on the map. In the fall of 1999, the flags came back down, and a crew poured a concrete boundary marker near the northeast corner. In early 2000, county records showed a land purchase, 61 acres, buyer listed as Appalachian Resources Group, LLC, registered in Delaware. Raymond wrote the name in the notebook. In the summer of 2000, Appalachian Resources bought another parcel, then 2 more. A cluster of purchases spread across 6 months, totaling 280 acres of land on both sides of Fishing Creek. Raymond tracked each one: date, parcel number, purchase price. He drew each acquisition onto a growing map in the back pages of the green notebook. The pattern was unmistakable. All 280 acres sat in a band running northeast to southwest. They formed a corridor, a pipeline corridor. Every parcel in the path had been quietly purchased except one. Parcel 7C, 12 acres, floodplain, no listed road access, and the only legal connection between the southern end of the corridor and Route 52 ran through a 12-foot easement recorded in August 1972 that Appalachian Resources had never found, had never acquired, and would never be able to work around. Raymond closed the notebook. He looked at the hand-drawn map on the kitchen table. He picked up his coffee. The trap was not set by anger or cleverness. It was set by 43 pages of county records and 6 Wednesday evenings in the back of a public library. And now all Raymond had to do was wait. The knock came on a Saturday morning in June 2006. Raymond was at the kitchen table with his coffee when he heard it. He set the mug down slowly. He stood up. He walked to the front door and opened it. A young man in a fleece vest stood on the porch. He had a laminated map under one arm and a handshake ready before the door was fully open. He introduced himself as a development representative for Appalachian Resources Group. He smiled the smile of someone who had never been told no. He said the number like it was a gift, $8,000. Raymond looked at him. He said, for the 12 acres off Fishing Creek. The man said, that's right. Given the floodplain designation and the access challenges, we think that's a very fair. Raymond said, no. The man stopped. He said, sir, I'm not sure you understand what? Raymond said, I do. Thank you for coming out. He closed the door. He walked back to the kitchen. He picked up his coffee. He wrote the date, the name, and the number in the notebook. $8,000, refused. He mowed the strip twice a year, May and September. He paid the annual tax bill every spring without fail, $49, then $53, then $61 as the county reassessed. He kept every receipt in the back pocket of the notebook, folded flat. The survey markers stayed visible. He checked them every season. Nobody else was checking. The second call came in the spring of 2011. Not a knock this time, a phone call. A county commissioner named Wayne Tully, formal and measured, who explained that the county was exploring potential acquisition of several parcels in the Fishing Creek corridor in connection with infrastructure development. He mentioned economic growth. He mentioned community benefit. He mentioned eminent domain the way a man mentions something he hopes you won't make him use. He offered $24,000. Raymond asked him one question. He said, has the county vacated the 1972 easement on Parcel 7C? There was silence on the line. Tully said, I'm not aware of the specific filing you're referencing. Raymond said, when you find it, call me back. He hung up. Tully never called back. Carol was 12 that summer. She had come out to the land with Raymond one afternoon in July, just the two of them, while Dottie stayed back to start dinner. Raymond had walked the strip with her, all 12 acres, the high end near the road and the low end near the creek. She had pointed to the survey marker at the northeast corner. She said, why do you keep checking that? Raymond looked at the marker for a moment. He said, so nobody moves it. She looked at him the way 12-year-olds look at their fathers when they suspect there is a longer answer they are not going to get. She didn't ask again, but she remembered. Inside a glass office building in Charleston, a project manager for Meridian Pipeline Holdings, which had quietly absorbed Appalachian Resources Group in 2009, slid a legal memo across a conference table in October 2016. The memo had one subject line, Parcel 7C, Acquisition Status. Under the subject line, in 2 short sentences, it said the parcel remained unacquired. It said no recorded easement transfer or vacate order had been located. The project manager looked at the lawyer sitting across from him. The lawyer said, we may have a problem. The project manager said, fix it. The third offer arrived in November 2017. A man named Preston Wade drove from Charleston to Raymond's front porch in a black sedan and knocked once, firm. He wore a 3-piece suit. He carried a leather briefcase. He accepted the coffee Dottie put in front of him without asking what kind it was. He set a document on the kitchen table. $190,000. He let the number sit there without touching it. He said Meridian was prepared to move quickly. He said the offer was final. He said there were legal avenues available to the company if a negotiated solution could not be reached, and he said it in a tone that was meant to land like a threat without sounding like one. Raymond looked at the document. He said, I appreciate you making the drive. Preston Wade waited. Raymond said, the answer is no. Dottie was standing at the counter behind Raymond. She said nothing. She had said nothing during any of the 3 offers. But after Preston Wade packed his briefcase and drove back down the gravel road, she poured herself a fresh cup of coffee and stood beside Raymond at the window. She said, is this still the plan? Raymond said, it always was. She nodded once and went back to the counter. That was enough. 18 months later, Meridian Pipeline broke ground on the corridor. 63 easement agreements signed, one outstanding. By January 2023, $340 million was committed to a 63-mile lateral that ran directly through the Fishing Creek corridor. The project was 8 months into construction when the legal team filed the final routing map with the county. The map showed parcel 7C as a gap in the line. A lawyer in the Charleston office called Preston Wade. Preston Wade said nothing for several seconds. Then he said, "Get me everything on that parcel." Going back to 1970. On a Thursday morning in March 2024, Raymond's phone rang. Unknown number. Charleston area code. He looked at the screen. He looked out the window at the fence post where the crow sometimes sat. He picked it up. One document. 23 years of silence. And a daughter who had been waiting to understand that answer since she was 12. Act 4 is where it all comes together, and you do not want to miss it. The voice on the other end did not start with hello. It started with a number. $450,000, said the way people say numbers they expect to end conversations. Raymond sat down. He said, "I'm listening." The lawyer, a man named Elliot Marsh, senior counsel for Meridian Pipeline Holdings, went on for 3 minutes. He explained the offer. He explained the timeline. He explained carefully that Meridian's position was strong and that litigation would be lengthy and expensive for all parties. Raymond let him finish. Then he said, "I'll call you back." He hung up. He picked up his coffee. He looked at the green notebook on the table. Then he called Carol. She drove down on a Saturday. She came in without knocking, the way she had since she was small. She set her bag on the chair by the door and walked straight to the kitchen table, where Raymond had already laid out 3 things: the green notebook, open to the page with the hand-drawn map, the $47 money order receipt, still folded from 2001, and a plain manila folder with photocopies of the original 1956 survey and the 1972 recorded easement. She sat down. She read for a long time. Raymond poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from her. He did not explain anything. He let her read. After 40 minutes, Carol closed the notebook. She said, "Dad, they have no claim here. The 1972 easement was never vacated. It runs with the land. It runs with your land. And they need it because without legal access from parcel 7C to Route 52, their southern terminus has no authorized connection to the public road network." Raymond said, "I know." She looked at him. She said, "Did you know this in 1998? He said, "I had a feeling." She looked at the folded receipt. She looked at the hand-drawn map. She looked at the notebook full of dates and numbers and refused offers going back 23 years. She said, "I remember you telling me why you checked the survey markers." He said, "So nobody moves them." She picked up her phone. Meridian's legal team filed the abandonment claim in April 2024. The argument was technical. They claimed that because the 1972 easement had sat unused for over 50 years, it had been effectively abandoned and was no longer legally binding. They cited 3 precedents. They had a thick brief and 2 senior attorneys and a sense of confidence that comes from winning a lot of cases against people who don't bring their records. Carol brought 3 documents. She set them on the table in the hearing room without comment, one at a time. First, the original 1956 survey showing the 12-foot easement as a recorded corridor. Second, the August 1972 county resolution recording the easement as an active public access right. Third, 53 consecutive years of Mercer County tax records showing parcel 7C assessed and paid every single spring with a maintenance notation on each filing by the same owner. Abandonment requires proving that the owner walked away. Raymond Hollis had never walked away from anything. Carol said one sentence. She said, "You cannot abandon a property you have paid taxes on for 53 consecutive years, and the county's own records confirm every payment." The judge looked at the tax receipts. He looked at the filing dates. He ruled in 4 minutes. Meridian's lead attorney reached for his phone before the judge finished speaking. The negotiation lasted 9 days. Carol handled every call. Raymond sat at the kitchen table and drank his coffee and waited. The first terms came in from Meridian. A lump sum. $450,000. Full and final. Sign and done. Raymond told Carol, no lump sum. Carol called Elliot Marsh and told him, my client is not interested in a lump sum. Marsh said, then what does he want? Carol said, a permanent recorded easement at a monthly rate, inflation indexed, transferable to his heirs, with a 20-year minimum term and a surface restoration clause binding Meridian in perpetuity. Marsh said that wasn't how Meridian structured agreements. Carol said, you have $340 million in the ground and no legal path forward without this parcel. You can structure this however my client needs. Marsh called back in 6 hours. He accepted every term. The monthly payment was $4,200, inflation indexed, beginning 30 days from signing, transferable to Carol and to her children after that. Raymond had paid $47 for the land 23 years ago. Carol called him to give him the news. He answered on the second ring. She said, they took it, all of it. He said, good. He hung up. He walked to the kitchen. Dottie was not there to hear it. She had been gone 5 years. But the kettle was on the stove, the same stove, and Raymond turned the burner on because some things you do out of habit and some things you do because the habit was always a kind of faith. He let the water heat. The signing happened on a Tuesday morning at the Mercer County Clerk's office. Carol was there. Elliot Marsh was there. 2 witnesses, a clerk who did not look up from her screen. Raymond signed his name. The clerk stamped it. She handed back a copy. Raymond folded it once and put it in his coat pocket. He walked out to the truck. He sat in the driver's seat for a moment. He opened the green notebook to the last blank page. He wrote one line. Parcel 7C, $47 in, $4,200 a month out. Forever. He closed the notebook. He drove home. The Mercer County Gazette ran a 2-paragraph item about the easement agreement the following Friday. It named Raymond Hollis and Meridian Pipeline Holdings. It listed the monthly figure. Douglas Garrett, who had long since left First Valley Bank and sold his 2 parcels from 2001 for a modest profit, read the item at a diner counter on Route 19. He did not say anything. He turned the page. 3 men who had watched Raymond walk out of that courthouse basement 23 years earlier happened to be at the same diner that morning. None of them said anything either. Some men walk into a county auction looking for a deal. Raymond Hollis walked in already knowing something no one else in the room had bothered to read. If you had been in Raymond's position, would you have taken the $450,000 lump sum and walked away, or held out for $4,200 every single month for the rest of your life? Drop your answer below. And if this story made you think twice about what people overlook, share it with someone who needs to hear it.